right, welcome into another episode of Off the Carousel, and pleased to bring on new Ohio State head coach Jake Diebler. Jake, looking good, man. It's been a wild ride for you, to say the least. It has been a wild ride since February. Has it hit you that you're the head coach at Ohio State right now?
I think it has finally. It took some time. I don't know that I had a whole lot of time in end of March and throughout the month of April to really sit back and realize, like, what happened. Everything that happened so fast, and my intent when I was named interim head coach, my sole focus was serving our players in this program well, and I didn't really fully, I think maybe pay even close enough attention as I should have leading down the stretch of the season as to what that meant for me after that year. But, here we are.
Here we are, 37 years old, head coach at Ohio State. Your background, I want to give some people your background for those who don't know it. Played at Valpo for 4 years, went on to be an assistant. I think you were a GA for Bright or Homer?
Homer. Yeah,
I
started as a GA for Homer. Yep.
And then when Homer retired, Bryce moves in, gets the head coaching job, and elevates you to a coaching position, correct?
Yep.
And then you go on, you do some video coordinator with Thad at Ohio State. Then obviously you're on Chris Holtman's staff. You go in between, you're at Vandy as an assistant there, also under Bryce. Recruit Darius Garland. You guys get hosed there, but we won't get into that. And then you get the Ohio State job. I want to go back though to you as a player. So I looked at your stats compared to your brother John's stats at Ohio State.
It was a little underwhelming, I bet.
They were a little. Listen, you did shoot 35% your final season from 38%, I'm sorry. Your final season at Valpo from 3, which is unbelievable. And then I go to your brother John's 3-point percentage, his final year at Ohio State. Do you know what it was?
It was 50, just over 50%.
That's right. So you're like, I kind of feel like we're looking at maybe a Dan, Bobby, Hurley type relationship here. And you lived in the shadow of your brother as a player, and now you're going to be the next Dan Hurley as a head coach. So you got to win a couple national titles. And your brother was a hell of a player.
Can I sign up for that right now? Is there a way to sign up for that right now? I'd love to do that.
I don't know. Listen, I don't know if Dan Hurley would have envisioned that. Obviously looking back at his coaching career and the ebbs and flows his career took. But here's another one for you. So your final season, I looked at this. You took 180 shots, total shots from the field at Valpo. How many were inside the 3-point arc?
I don't remember, but it wasn't very many.
29.
Yeah, I knew it wasn't very many.
29 of 180. So you were
at that point. I think I had seen what my brother was doing down at Ohio State as a young player, and I thought maybe I should try to be a little more like that and fire a bunch of threes. But I blame it on my older brother. My older brother didn't teach me as well as I taught John, so that's what I would tell myself as to why the youngest ended up being the best player.
Yeah, he's a hell of a player. All right, so let's go through. I guess let's start with the day everything started to heat up. Because again, you finish the regular season, you beat Purdue, your first game as interim, which was insane. Nobody saw that coming. You go 5-1 to end the regular season. You go in the Big Ten tournament, win a couple games there, finish your interim kind of slate 8-3. And again, you and I talked, in full disclosure, shortly after you got the interim job. I called you and we talked a little bit. And I'm saying to you, like, hey, this is a great tryout for you to get a mid-major job. And you never said a word about the Ohio State permanent job. Never. We never talked about it, anything. What was it like when the new AD, too? You get a new AD coming in that you don't know at all, Ross Bjork. What was it like when he called you in the office, and what was that whole process like to get that job?
Yeah, I think it became real while we were in Minneapolis at the Big Ten tournament. And, I was told, hey, we're going to do an interview, after the Big Ten tournament. And, I remember Ross telling me when we're after our Illinois game, when we're on our way back, like, let's meet tomorrow. And so we got back late. I went straight to my office. I don't even remember what time I got home, but I really hadn't spent a lot of time prepping for this. It really, the focus had been, finishing that season well. So I was up all night trying to prep for this interview that I really didn't quite know what to expect. We had the interview that next day, early afternoon, and by the end of the night, Ross was at my house offering me the job. So it happened really, really fast, but it's literally a dream. I mean, I think that's the part about it. People are, well, what's it feel like? How was it going through that process? For me, I'm living a dream right now.
Was that how you prepared for tests at Valpo as well? You just kind of winged it?
Procrastination was unfortunately a significant part of my success in college academically, we'll say. But
Well,
no, this was not as intentional as maybe some of that procrastination back in that day.
and you hadn't really, again, how much time had you spent with Ross? A little bit
Not
before
much.
that?
Yeah, he had been at games obviously, and were able to have an introduction, and we had a little bit of time together. Before that, he was excited. Certainly after we beat the team up north, and he got to his first experience with that, so that was fun. We got to spend a little time together around that, but there wasn't a lot of dialogue. Certainly wasn't dialogue surrounding the job. It was more just getting to know each other a little bit.
I always say, I mean, it's hard for assistants um, to be elevated to a job like this. I mean, you and I talked about this. I don't know how many people have gotten this opportunity to go from an assistant to an elite high major job, which is what you've got here, right? I mean, John Shire did it at Duke. Tommy Lloyd did it from a different spot. He went from, Gonzaga assistant to Arizona head coach. But there isn't really a blueprint of too many guys being able to get this type of opportunity. Who did you speak to, or who have you spoken to about this? Have you talked to Shire, Tommy Lloyd, some of these other guys about how you navigate this deal? And luckily, you had. I mean, the good thing is you had a little bit of time to navigate it as an interim.
Yeah, so I did talk to John, and he gave me some great advice. I had a couple conversations with him, saw Tommy on the road, leaned on the Drew family, who's really close to me, and I've learned a ton from both Bryce and Scott and Homer. Talked to Thad, who was I obviously knows Ohio State intimately, and had a great deal of success here. So his perspective was really valuable. And then even guys like Drew Valentine, and kind of some guys that I've gotten to know who, haven't been head coaches maybe as long as some others. But I thought the differences in advice and opinions, so to speak, from different types of experiences was all valuable. The common denominator was you got to be yourself,
Yep.
And that part for me was clear from the beginning. Like, be yourself, figure out what works for you. And that was probably pretty natural to do.
How important also was knowing everybody there in order to get the job, maybe number one, in order to also kind of hit the job running now? Because in the new world of NIL, if you don't know people already, like, it takes time. It takes time to build those relationships. Obviously, we've got the even more changing landscape right now of, like, we had collectives. We don't know what that's going to look like moving forward, and whether it's going to be in-house or not, and revenue sharing, all that. But, like, how important was it for you, do you think, to get the job because you had those relationships? And number two, moving forward, to be able to acclimate yourself because you already have, a lot of the foundation.
I think the familiarity and connections with people, certainly, in the Ohio State community was beneficial, and it helped. The transition was probably smoother, and that was certainly important. I think one of the benefits of this being my first time as a head coach is I don't have this extensive career where I'm set doing things a very specific way. And like it's going to be easy for me to adjust as the landscape changes. And so I think that's a real benefit. It's certainly, you'll see some veteran coaches who will adjust extremely well. I'm not saying they can't, but for me personally, it's not like I'm in year 7 where I'm getting into the swing of things and I got a specific way I want to do it. I know what we need to do here and locked in with how this year's going to go and how we're building this program, but it's going to be easy for us to adjust as the landscape changes. And I think the great thing is, at a place like Ohio State, we should be leaders, moving forward as the change comes.
Yeah, I've said that to everybody. I think being young, it's obviously twofold, right? Some of the veteran coaches have done it. They've got the experience, all that.
Yep.
But being young these days probably does not hurt, because again, you're not as frustrated as some of the older coaches are. Let's face it. I mean, they are with kind of how quickly this thing has flipped. And you're not that far removed from being a player. So you kind of can relate to some of these guys right now. Now, I don't know what you would have gotten NIL wise. I don't know, maybe a Subways deal. What do you think?
I would have been really happy with that. Really happy with that. One free sandwich a week would have gone a long ways at that time.
But it's true. Like you can adapt a whole lot easier than some of these guys. And again, some of them, hey, listen, Scott Drew has adapted well, right? Like I'm sure he's frustrated with a lot more than probably you're frustrated with, but he's adapted well. But then there are some old school coaches that aren't going to adapt as well. Guys in their 50s and 60s and even 70s that this thing may chase out ultimately, because they don't want to play this game. They don't want to go down the route of having to outbid other schools for players. They just don't, and some of these players making more money than coaches, whether it's assistants or even head coaches. It's a new world. It's a new world. And again, I think at 37, you're more apt to be able to handle it and not fight it than a lot of guys that are older than you.
Yeah, well, I think this is a circumstance where it's beneficial. The saying, you don't know what you don't know. Yeah. And this is beneficial. And like, listen, I'd love to have some of the values that come with, being an experienced head coach and, having done it for a long time. There's a great value in that. That'll still be valuable moving forward. But for me, this will be, as the landscape changes, it'll be easy, I think, for us to adapt with it here, because I don't have these set ways of doing things.
So a lot of people, myself included, have you in their preseason top 25s. You were able to, obviously you're going to lose some dudes. We know that. Like you lost some good, talented players, Roddy Gale, Akpara, Middleton, Key, like those guys are gone, but you did a great job in the portal. And I think one of the things that I was impressed at was you went early. You went early and got a lot of dudes early. And it was like, I feel like it was this kind of game within this game of navigating the transfer portal. Obviously, you want to get the right players, but some coaches kind of waited and maybe saw what the market was going to bear later. You had your roster done fairly quickly. Now you retained the most important piece to me, which is Bruce Thornton, who's an absolute stud in every way. As a point guard who's going to make your life so much easier and did last year. Right? Like he just sets the right example, right? He's just a quiet leader, plays the game the right way, approaches it the right way. How important was that? And what was that process like of retaining Bruce?
Yeah. So, I think the beautiful thing about April, it's certainly one of the hard parts, is you can adjust your roster quickly, certainly much more quickly than you used to be able to. And we're going to play a little bit differently moving forward from a pace standpoint and versatility. So for me, I looked at, the opportunity for turnover to happen as a good thing, because we were able to bring in some guys who are going to allow us to play a little bit faster and play different, which is great. But that being said, I think being able to have you got a guy like Bruce Thornton, who I think sometimes, because Bruce is an elite worker, and he's so consistent. People want to say they forget to talk about how talented he is too.
Yeah.
You know, like he's really talented too. And then the other piece I thought was Michi Johnson deciding, to come to Ohio State because he wants to win back home, and his experience and he and I having, some familiarity from when he was here before. I thought that was really important as well. So we were able to certainly retain some good piece. I think we've got some young guys who are going to take a step forward. Really excited about Devin Royal, and then we were able to bring in some guys in the portal who fit the way we want to play. And that was probably the most important thing, is trying to establish right away, like, this is how we want to play. Let's get the personnel to fit that. And I think it's one of the good things. It certainly is. It works both ways. It works for players to be able to find, this movement, be able to find the right place and find something that fits them. And I think it works for coaches that way too.
Whether you are a world-class athlete or a podcaster like me, we all understand the importance of mental and physical well-being and proper recovery for top-notch performance. After a 6-month season loaded with cross-country travel, I can promise you that proper recovery is a priority for me these days. That's why I'm excited that Unified Healing is sponsoring this episode of the Field of 68. Unified Healing is a new and super innovative global network of wellness centers powered by Energy Enhancement System, or the EE system. If you haven't heard of the EE system yet, you'll want to listen up. This technology promotes wellness, deep relaxation, purification, and rejuvenation. Whether you're here in New Jersey or at one of the hundreds of other locations across the globe, access to a center is easy and affordable. If you're interested in experiencing the EE system technology for yourself, go to unifiedhealing.com/unified68 to learn more and find a center near you. That's UNIFYD healing.com/UNIFYD, the number 6, the number 8. No material or testimonials on the Unified Healing website are intended to be viewed as medical advice or as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment, and before undertaking a new healthcare regimen, including the EE system.
Yeah, I mean, what was it? I kind of alluded to this before. Like, was this something that you guys went in thinking, hey, we're going to go early and get a bunch of dudes because we don't know what the money's going to be like at the end? Or did it just so happen that way and you were able to get those players early enough and kind of get your roster done on the early end compared to a lot of other teams?
I think we had an idea of what we were looking for. And so that was probably the most important part. Was we identified guys who we felt fit what we were looking for, and we didn't really hesitate, at that point, or kind of wait to see what else happened or who else went in. But I didn't feel like we operated from a position of just rushing.
Yeah.
But when we saw what we, and kind of identified, hey, this is what we're looking for, and we saw some guys. And listen, there was part of it too with I think the timing of when a guy may have left, like, you had to adjust, and you got to kind of react and adapt. And we were able to do that really well too. And I think, again, felt like I viewed April as an opportunity to establish, hey, this is how we want to play, and we can go, you now have the flexibility to find the right pieces.
All right, here's what I'll say. Here's what sticks out to me about your class more than anything. And then I want to get to Aaron Bradshaw, because he's as much of an X factor as there probably is in the country this year. Michi Johnson won a ton of games last year at South Carolina. Micah Parrish won a ton of games last year at San Diego State. Sean Stewart won a ton of games at Duke. Aaron Bradshaw won a ton of games in the regular season at Kentucky. Like, that's always, if I'm a coach, and every coach says it, right? Every coach says it, Jake. I want to get guys that come from winning programs. Not everybody can do it. How important was it to look at that? And again, you can miss out on some dudes, and then, hey, you are looking at a guy who put up maybe, I don't want to say empty numbers, but numbers that are harder to evaluate for programs that aren't winning.
It was really important. I don't think it's not a perfect science, certainly, and it doesn't always, work out that way. But for us, we were intentional about that. Um, and I'm excited about the experience that we added to our roster. And I think when you look at, what we're trying to accomplish as a program, this season even, certainly as we build this, but this season, it was important to bring guys in who had experience playing in the type of games that we're going to be playing in and playing in the postseason and things. So that wasn't the only factor, right?
Yeah.
Wanted some talented players, certainly, and wanted guys who fit and could play the way we want to play. And I feel like with the four guys we brought in, I feel like we couldn't have done better. It was really, really good.
No, it's crazy because I looked at it and I'm like, it's rare that happens. Because again, everybody writes that down, right? Every coach is going to be like, what guys,
right?
Talented, winning programs, culture guys, high character, whatever. But like, you actually did it. You did it. By the way, you need to ask Michi about how bad of a blackjack player he is. Okay, you need to ask him because we played. My daughter and I were down at the Bahamas last year when South Carolina was down there, and we played a lot of blackjack. South Carolina's team was on the table a lot, and so were Talia and I. And Michi was a terrible blackjack player. One of those guys that you look over and they're horrible and they're making all these bad decisions, but they end up winning at the end. That was Michi.
Well, hopefully less time at the blackjack table moving forward for Michi. But I'll say this about him. I'll say this about him, Jeff. He cares so much. Like, I'm so excited about him being here because he cares so much about Ohio State and this program. And maybe I'm overvaluing that. I don't think I am, but I've been so impressed with his voice since he's been here. He's always been a good worker, but you can just tell and sense like this means a lot to him. And I think that's hard to find and it's hard to identify, but he exemplifies that. So I'm we'll I don't know necessarily I want to spend any time helping him get better at blackjack. We may just stay away from that, but I'll tell you what, his focus and his energy and the purpose he's operating with right now has been really special. It's going to be important for us.
No, he's got a great personality, great kid, and he's matured. I mean, listen, anytime you're going to go back to a place where you did not fare well early in your career, like that takes a lot of maturity as well. Because a lot of kids would not. They would be like, I'm done. It didn't work out for me. But to kind of face, because a lot of people thought Michi was going to be, hey, great right out of the gates. He struggled. He matured. He's gotten better. And I think, no, that was a huge, I mean, your perimeter is awesome. You can tell, like, and that's why a lot of us, I think, have you ranked so high in the preseason is because we know what you're going to get out of your perimeter. And you know what you're going to get for the most part out of your perimeter. Up front, a little bit different, a little bit more of a question mark. But man, you're not going to find a bigger fan of Aaron Bradshaw and his talent and his ceiling and his potential and his skill level and all that than me. Like I said, like he's the ultimate X factor because, and last year was tough for him because what people failed to realize is he missed a lot of time in the preseason, a lot
which
of
is
time
hard for freshmen,
and early in the season. So it wasn't fair when you've got a talented freshman coming in and they're behind the eight ball. It's hard for them to make up ground like that, especially a big like Aaron Bradshaw. He looked at times completely lost out there at Kentucky. He just, and there were times when he looked great. And he never really got to play through his mistakes because there were three bigs that were kind of rotating in throughout the season.
Right.
So tell me, first of all, how you envision utilizing Aaron Bradshaw this season, if you can, if you have a plan for him, which I'm sure you do. I'm sure you've thought to yourself and also sat down with Aaron and mapped out, hey, here's what I want from you this year. Here's kind of how I envision us using you.
Yeah, I think we're going to embrace his versatility. I think first and foremost, I believe in his ability to shoot. And, I think creating more space for our perimeter players, that'll be an important part of it. But his versatility, both offensively and defensively, quite honestly. So we're going to embrace that. We're going to push him to stretch the floor and shoot some threes. And I think that the thing that I was really impressed with, and when you go back and watch film, was like his motor ran, and he played hard, and he played with some toughness. And so I think the consistency at which he was able to do that, where he may have been inconsistent in some other areas, another full off season of hard work and development. I'm really excited about his potential. I think the thing that's exciting for me about our front court, and we have more versatility in the front court than I think most teams do. And we're going to embrace that versatility. It allows us to play at the pace that we're hoping to play at and things. But they're talented, and I think they're good players right now. I think the exciting thing is our ceiling and our ability to grow throughout the course of the year is maybe a little higher than a lot of teams, or maybe some teams in the past, because they are younger. But that also means they're going to, they got a chance to really grow throughout the course of the season. And listen, those guys are going to be getting, real consistent minutes too.
Yeah, I can't. You're gonna have some fun practices, because again, I've seen Bradshaw from afar and his personality, and I've been around Michi, and those guys, again, good energy, like really good energy. Yeah. You may have to harness it a little bit, but like just fun, loose kids. Like Michi, kind of, I don't know how old he is now, but still acts like a kid in a lot of ways, and you need that these days.
There's a lot of value in that. I go back to the COVID year, and when we had Dwayne Washington Jr. here, and I tell people all the time, like, to me, Dwayne Washington Jr. was probably the most valuable player in the country. Wasn't maybe the best player, certainly a really, really good player, but he was so valuable because every single day he went into the gym, like he had a great energy, he had a smile on his face. It didn't take away from, how hard he worked. I think my brother had an element of that.
You did.
And I've seen him in the gym, like guys who love being in there, and there's a joy that they operate with, and you can do that consistently. I mean, we know how long the college basketball season is, and you go through ups and downs, you hit adversity. So having some guys who can do that every day, and guys you can rely on for that, it's so valuable. It's so valuable, and it makes coaching a lot of fun.
All right, last question I have for you. You were on staff for the Odin Conley years. You were not.
I'm not that old, man. That was before.
You're playing, right? You were playing. Oh yeah. Were you? I can't remember. Wasn't there some? You were never on, and yeah, you were playing then. That's right. Okay. All right. I'm battling a little flu or something here. So
I got to work. I got to train those guys.
That's what it was. That's what it was.
Yeah.
I remember hearing that. Right. You got to train Odin and Conley. Train
both of them in the off season. So when I was here with Thad, one of the things I was able to do in my role there, when I went from being an assistant coach at Valpo to a video coordinator at Ohio State, a lot of people thought I was crazy for doing that, but I wanted, obviously my affection for Ohio State played a part in that, but I wanted to experience something different. And when I got here, I in the off season, in the summer, I spent a lot of time training the pros, and we would have everywhere between 8 and 12 pros in the gym, certainly, because this was after, my brother's era had finished. So you got guys like Evan Turner coming back, Mike Conley, Greg Oden, Jared Sullinger, Will Buford, who was playing overseas. John was playing overseas at that time. And, BJ Mullins was in the gym. Like the guys coming in and out of the gym, like it was incredible. And I got to train them all. I was in the gym all day, just training guys. And that's one of the things I love about this place, how connected our former players are. We got vet camp that we're going to do here next week. D'Angelo Russell's going to be there, Jayshawn Tate, EJ Liddell, Bryce Sensabaugh. Like, I mean, you got all of our current NBA players and a lot of our guys playing overseas. And then you'll have, Clark Kellogg will pop by. And so the fraternity that is Ohio State basketball is really special. It's one of the things I love most about this place. And I want our guys to be around them, those guys who hung banners in this building, cut down nets, like went on to achieve certainly, great things personally, but also, as a team and for this program. So the more we can have them around, the better. So I'm always looking for an excuse to get some former players around here. And Columbus is a great city, so a lot of them like to come back anyway on their own. But yeah, it's been good.
All right. Well, listen, Jake Diebler, new Ohio State head coach, join us here off the carousel. Jake, I'm sure I'll see you in the road in July.